So I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name is Gwyn Golden. I'm a sales director here at Experlogix. Been with the company for 14 years, and I am physically located in Denver, Colorado. So what we're going to be talking about today is a little bit of background of Experlogix, who we are, focus a little bit on what is CPQ. Some of you may not know that acronym, so we'll talk about that. The benefits that you can receive from a CPQ solution, some customer success that we've had, and then I'll spend a good portion of the time in the solution itself, give you a good, nice demonstration of how our CPQ works within finance and operations. And then we'll end with some more resources for you and any questions and open it up for questions. As we're going through, if you do have questions, feel free to type them into the chat, and then we can address those. If it's necessary to address it at that time, we will. Otherwise, we'll hold those questions to the end. So with that, we'll just go ahead and talk briefly about Experlogix. We have been a Microsoft partner since 2005. So we are a completely certified and Microsoft preferred solution for Dynamics. We do support different integrations. Of course, I'm going to be focusing on finance and operations today, but want to make you aware, we know a lot of companies that have finance and operations also have the D365 for sales. You may have commerce. You may be utilizing a portal, and then we do, of course, support Business Central as well. So I'll be talking about how all of these pieces work together, but our biggest focus will be on how it works standalone with D365 Finance and Operations today. So for those of you on the call that are thinking, well, what is the CPQ? So CPQ stands for Configure, Price, Quote. And really what that means is we want to make sure that for companies that have complex products or complex services that you're selling, we're going to help you configure all of the aspects of your quote. So anything that has to be taken into consideration for that configuration. And we want to price it based on any variable that you throw at us. So whether a variable be, who the customer is, what day of the week they're buying it, dimensional information, trade agreements, whatever details we need to take into consideration to be able to price your product or service, that's what CPQ is going to help with. And then the Q portion is, be able to present your customer with a nice professional looking document. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. And when I kind of think about, CPQ, what are some considerations or what are some things that you should be thinking about to determine if CPQ would be a right solution for you? And some of the things that I come up with is, first and foremost, do you sell a product? So if you sell a product, is it just a widget that you're selling, or is this product highly configurable where you're able to offer different options and have different aspects related to this particular product? Likewise, you could maybe sell a service. Maybe you sell a product that also has services combined, and the services should be associated to the product based on certain considerations. So then we have customers that only sell services. They don't sell any products, but their services are very highly configurable based on how you want to present, the quote to your customer. Thinking about how long it takes to do a quote. We've had customers that came to us that they would tell us it would take weeks to put together a quote because maybe somebody would start working on it and then they'd have to go to somebody else to look it over, make sure it's right, verify it. Maybe we're going through approvals and so forth. So it can take a really long time to create a quote. But with the CPQ solution, we're taking all of that guesswork and all of the need for validating through somebody else out. And we've had people that used to take weeks down to minutes. So you can have some really big time savings with the CPQ solution. Another thing to think about, is it difficult to train new salespeople? So I often think of when a new salesperson starts and they're getting trained on how to price out the product or the service that you sell. If you're having to spend a really long time to get them up to speed for how to use this spreadsheet, or where you need to copy information from Word documents, you need to, be going through all of these hoops to be able to have your salesperson be able to generate a quote. And then usually a new salesperson, somebody's going to have to look it over and until they're comfortable. Well, with the CPQ solution, you can have a guided selling approach that can help new sales reps make sure that they're putting together an accurate quote, which really falls into the next thing. Because if your salespeople are often making mistakes, they're forgetting to add on something, they're adding on things that they shouldn't be, they're using a spreadsheet or a calculator and making some mistakes with the calculations. If your salespeople are often making mistakes, a CPQ solution might be right for you. Another consideration is, do rules dictate how you sell? So when you're thinking about, gosh, I sell this product for X amount of dollars, but if it has this option added to it, or if these other variables change, then different things about the product or service that you offer should change as well. So when you're thinking about, it's not just a straight, this is how we sell products, different factors can determine how we sell it, then a CPQ solution is right for you. Yet another consideration, are multiple variables used to determine how you price your offerings? Are you having to go in and punch in all of these different values and double check your work to make sure that it's accurate? So with Experlogix CPQ, we'll handle all of those variables for you. If visualization is important to you, so I know often within finance and operations, it might not be as critical that you're not sitting right in front of the customer and letting them visualize it. But I want you to think about even extending future wise. If you wanted, let's say, to expose a CPQ solution to commerce, and you want the ability to have the customer visualize everything that they're configuring, how much of an impact is that going to make that they might buy it faster? So again, I always say if they see it, they'll buy it. That's really could be a critical aspect. Or if you're wanting to expose this CPQ to a self-service portal, then visualization may be key. So we'll be talking about a little bit of the visualization capabilities that we offer as I go through the demonstration, but those are some things to keep in mind. So when we're looking at that big picture now, benefits that a CPQ product can bring is, being able to produce a quote fast, get it out faster than your competitors. So if a customer is looking to you for a quote, they don't want to wait a long time. They need it fast. As I talked about visualization, if that's key, the guided selling aspect, where you can make all of your salespeople experts from day one to be able to really guide them to the product selection. Increasing profit margins. So if you're needing the ability to upsell or to do some cross-selling where you're actually offering other options to a customer, that can increase the bottom line. And then the last two pieces here, integration, as I talked about, we do have a mature, stable integration to Dynamics. We will handle all of the complexities that you need. So it's sales to manufacturing. So as I go through the demonstration, you'll see that not only are we looking at the quoting aspect, but if you are a manufacturer, which we know a lot of our FinOps customers are, then you want the ability to have the bill of material and the route steps all be configured for you as well. So a sales rep won't have to think about that. They'll go ahead and have the BOM created automatically. So industries that benefit from CPQ. Of course, it goes back to any company that has complexities around their product or their service. So as you're looking at these different industries, each one of them has their unique requirements for configuration, whether it be a hardware and software company or the typical doors and windows, high-tech companies, media and entertainment, all over the board, because every single one of these industries has their unique reasons for needing a CPQ. So just wanted to put up, pulled out a couple of those industries that we find for FinOps: manufacturing, technology, heavy equipment, and professional services. All of these customers are using it within Dynamics. So, if you're in one of these industries, perhaps you recognize one of these customers. And then we are a very scalable product. So for companies that are very large worldwide, maybe they have needs for multi-currency, multi-language, we have that ability to support that. So you're in good company if you are in the enterprise space. So kind of last slide before we get into demonstration is to really just talk about how Experlogix fits in this ecosystem. So as I mentioned, because we do have integration with sales, it could be from lead to opportunity to quote utilizing Experlogix, and then go on to the sales order, the fulfillment, and invoicing. However, for companies that don't have D365 sales, this is what I'm going to be focusing on today, where you would have the ability to do a quote in finance and operations, have that quote then convert to the order, the fulfillment, and the invoice. So that's kind of what we're going to be going through on the demonstration today. And as mentioned, if I start going through something that you have some questions on, feel free to type them into the chat, and Caitlin will be monitoring those. So let's go ahead and go into our demo environment. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take you through that process that we just talked about. So we're going to start it from a quote, and we'll just do a new quote. So of course, we're just in finance and operations at this point. I'm going to say that it's for an existing customer that I'm working with. Pick the customer. And at this point now, you've got your blank sales quote. So now from here, you'll notice that there's a CPQ menu selection, and you will be able to then configure this quote. Now this CPQ menu selection also appears on the order. So if you don't do quoting and you just want to use CPQ at the order form, you'll have that capability. But let's say that you wanted to go ahead and configure this quote. So by clicking on configure, you're going to notice that it's launching into our application for Experlogix. And I'm going to talk through two different scenarios here. If you were a company that sold trucks, and I remember I'd mentioned that a new salesperson, maybe they've just started, they're not as familiar with the products. So you could actually give them a guided selling approach that will help the sales rep ask smart questions so that they could then identify an appropriate truck to recommend to the customer. You could also think of this help me choose option as, the customer doesn't really know what they need. They know that they need a truck, but they don't know what truck is the right one for them until we understand how they want to use it. And so you would then be asking the customer questions. And what I like to look at here is, here's all of the different trucks or tractors that we could offer to the customer. And depending on how they want to use it, we're going to start to filter those choices so that we can ultimately suggest the appropriate truck for them. And so the first question we'll ask, are you looking for a truck or a tractor? And they say definitely a truck. So great. Now that we know you're looking for a truck, how do you intend to use it? Are you going to be using it for general freight? Are you carrying refrigerated goods? Tell me more about this. And so they say, well, let's just say general freight. Okay. And now we might be asking them, because we're looking at how heavy duty this needs to be. Are you going to be driving it mostly on a flat terrain, or will you be going up, Denver in the mountains? So they say, no, it's going to be in flat terrain. And how much weight do you typically carry? And so now as we go through, we're kind of getting a better idea of what they're looking for. So we can see the different trucks and be able to compare them to see, okay, what's, the differences between these. Oh, I see that, this one's better for fuel economy, and that type of information that's presented. And as you go through and make some more selections, you might get to the point that there's just one truck. But if you play with any of these filters, you'll be able to see that it's constantly going to be reconfiguring to determine what would be the best truck that we should offer. Okay, so from here, we could actually just pick one of these trucks and sell it to them. However, I'm going to go back to the home page. Oftentimes, a customer knows what truck they're looking for, but it needs to be configured to their particular liking. And so in this case, we're going to start off with a base model. So we're offering them, these are the different 4 series of trucks that we offer. They tell us they're interested in the EX5000. We're going to go ahead and select that. Now the sales rep is presented with everything that's configurable about a truck. So on the left-hand side here, you can see different categories. So if we're picking different transmissions, adding in a sleeper, picking some different tires and so forth. At the bottom here, you can see different calculations. These are real-time updating as we start to make some selections. So if I need to keep my eye on that profitability or my commission, we'll be able to see that at a heads-up display. You'll also have access to additional information. So let's say that we needed to pop out to a marketing brochure. I can go ahead and click on the marketing brochure. Or maybe I want to go ahead and go back here. Cannot get out of my screen here. Sorry about that. Got to minimize that. So let's close that. So we might want to be able to come back into the quote and see some other information, some specifications and so forth. So you'll have that other details at your fingertips. And as we go through and start making some other changes here, let me move this over. We can be prompted with some messaging. So notice that if I were to ask them what's most important to you about this truck, and this day and age, they say, oh, definitely fuel economy. We're going to say, well, if fuel economy is important to you, we recommend that you get an aerodynamic package. We recommend that you get these Michelin tires. So think of these messaging as a way for the sales rep to interact with the customer so that we're really giving them the best options. And so here, if they didn't want something, we can go ahead and unmark it. But if the customer thinks that that's a good idea, we'll just go ahead and make those changes. And that will now update the quote. It's updated all of the information relating to pricing changes and so forth. Okay, we can list things like promotions that are going on to be able to see those details. If the customer said, you know what, tell me a little bit more about this engine, we can see things like the torque rating, RPMs, and they say, you know what, let's bump that up a little bit. So tell me what you have for other engines. So now we're going into a filter window for the engines, and we can start to filter on all of this criteria. So if we wanted to say, well, how much torque rating do you need? And they said, well, it definitely needs to be higher than 1700. So we're going to go ahead and put in 1700. And then they say, and the governed RPM should be greater than 500. And now we're down to 6 engines. Maybe we're going to sort it by price. So now I can really talk to them about all of the different capabilities. And they decide, yep, this one in the middle of the road looks pretty good. High RPMs, not too expensive. So we'll go ahead and select that particular engine. But now what's happened is it's actually identified that there's an incompatibility. So once again, if this were a new sales rep, they can be presented with this message to let them know they need to communicate to the customer that they're going to either have to pick a different engine or they could pick a different transmission. And so we're going to make sure that it's always a very accurate quote and not making any mistakes, making sure that we're offering the right components. So the sales rep would say, hey, I can offer you these 2 transmissions and tell them what the price difference is. And once they make one of these selections, in this case, this is good news. They're getting a 20% discount because we're having a promotion on the Eatons right now. And so I'll just go communicate that. Now you'll see that the error message has been satisfied and we can continue on with the configuration. Okay, now with CPQ, as I mentioned, you can have things like visualization. So sometimes we just, maybe we're sitting right next to the customer. We want to show them what it looks like in a different color. Maybe we want to show them different details related to it. So I want to see what it's going to look like with no fairing. So it kind of takes that away, or I want to go ahead and put that back. If we add on other components, so in this case with the sleeper, I'm going to point out a couple things are going to happen when we add in the sleeper. So first of all, I'm going to expand this. You'll notice that this category only has one subcategory, which is basically adding in the 52-inch or the 76-inch cab. When I make one of these selections, a couple things are going to happen. Number one, it's going to add in some other categories. Number two, it's going to update the picture. And number 3, it's going to pop up an upsell. Okay, so a lot of things are happening at the same time. So here's the upsell message where it's saying, hey, if they are getting a sleeper, we should recommend some other options. So recommend a bunk and a refrigerator. Once again, we can unmark these, or if the customer says that sounds great. Now you can see that we've got other categories, because if we're offering them a sleeper, we should offer them some other storage options, some windows, some doors. So think of this as, again, it's a guided selling approach that is going to only show relevant options based on what the customer has indicated their need for. Okay, so we'll go ahead and leave that sleeper on there, continue on down. So I'm not going to go through all of these categories, but I'll kind of show you, if you're wanting to add in maybe some warranty, some service contracts. So this isn't just related to products, you can add in other services as well. You can do things with discounting. So if a sales rep knows that they have a certain threshold that they're allowed to go before it has to get approval, they'll be able to play around with these numbers, and they can see, how it's affecting the profitability, how it's affecting the commission. Let's say that you go a little bit higher. Okay, 20%, yep, it's dropping. My commission's not as great. But if they get to a point that that's going to require some approval, this one's telling me I can still do it, but it's not a great deal. I think I have to go up to about 40%. Now this is requiring some approvals. Now this can kick off an approval workflow that can, maybe go to my manager or let somebody know that they need to approve this before it can go on. But I'm going to go ahead and just keep this one simple. We're just going to say we're not giving any discount at this time. So we'll just go ahead and hit save and close. Now what's happening now is it's taking the details of this configuration and it's populating it back into D365 where we started. It's going to update all of the line items, all of the relevant information relating to that. So we'll give that just a moment to refresh. So now we're back where we started at the quote. And you can see that I've got kind of an item here that I'm going to have to make, because this is going to be a manufactured piece. And so it assigns a variant number. And we've got some different additional components, if you will, that are added onto this configuration. Now, what I'll point out is that anytime that you go back into configure, this will look and say, okay, I see that you've configured a truck already. So what do you want to do? Do you want to edit this configuration? Delete the configuration and start over? Duplicate this configuration? Do you want to just add a brand new configuration? So let me explain kind of what's going on in this window, because you have the ability to have multiple configured products or services on one single quote. So think of it if a customer called and said, yep, I need this type of truck. Now I need a different truck. And I need a quote for a third truck. And so we can go through the whole configuration aspect and add that. Another reason this window might be used is for companies that want to show a comparison. Hey, I've configured this great truck for you. Maybe I'm going to give you a good, better, best option. What if you really beefed it up, added in a lot of different components? How would that look? How would that affect the price? So we're going to go ahead and duplicate this. And now that's making an exact copy of this particular configuration. And then it will able to edit the configuration and see how it's going to affect the bottom line. So give that just a moment to refresh. And now we'll come into the second configuration. And let's say that they wanted to see what it would be like if they got a different engine. So let's go ahead and select a different engine. I'm just going to sort it by price, most expensive one on the top. Let's do like this one. Actually, I wanted to pick a different one because I want to show you how the transmissions are going to change. So let's choose like this one. And so now you'll notice we have more transmissions to select from. So I'm going to go ahead and select a different transmission. And it's smart enough to say, well, wait a minute, we're going to have to remove a promotion because you're not getting an Eaton anymore. You went with the Allison. And let's go with the bigger sleeper. So again, it knows, hey, I'm going to have to remove something that's not applicable. So everything is all making it easy for the sales rep. I don't forget to remove some items. Let's go ahead and add in one other component and just hit the save button. Now, in essence, what we've done now is we didn't mess with the first configuration that we had. we're able to now to come back to the home page, and we're going to be able to compare these configurations side by side to be able to, see which one the customer might want to go with. Come back here, you can see a little bit of a different price. You've got a compare button. So if we click on compare, this is now going to show us every category, every option that is in that category, whether it exists on that configuration or not. So if we want to just drill in on what's different, we're going to click on show differences. And now this will show this one's got a promotion. We've got 2 different engines, 2 different transmissions, and this one had the mattress, but this one did not. Okay, so from here, if we need to see additional details, you can click on these hyperlinks and it'll give you the more information. So I like to use this window if we're kind of working through some different pricing options for the customer, or if they truly are getting multiple products. The duplicate feature is nice because you could duplicate it, change one thing, the color. They want one that's red, one that's blue. And then once we've made the changes, we can go ahead and save it back. Now in this case, because we're just going to pretend that they were just playing around with different pricing, they've decided they want to stick with the first quote. So we're going to go ahead and delete the one that we were playing around with. When you hit close, that's going to come back and update this particular quote. So just know that you can go in and out of this configuration as many times as you want and print the quote, send it, create the order and so forth. So we'll be talking about printing in a moment. For this exercise, I'm just going to go ahead and say that I've sent it just to push that through. We're going to go ahead and confirm it. Say okay. And this is really just showing you, the complete integration with finance and operations, because this is the first time now that I'm going to be talking about opening up that order and kind of showing you what's happened on the back end. So we started from the quote. This is now an order. If we come down to the line details of this first product, which is something that we need to make, we're actually creating a BOM. Now, I haven't shown you this button yet. This is called the BOM view. This is actually Experlogix's view. Oh. Go back into configures for a second. Not sure why that didn't show. So let me come in here because I want to show kind of the BOM view. So the BOM view is what's going to be changing as configurations, are made and added and so forth. So, as a reminder, if I add in, let's say that sleeper, and come back to that BOM view, we can actually see that the BOM has changed. Well, in essence, that's what's happening in F&O. So I'm going to go ahead and just close out of this configuration. We'll come back here. This is the data structure that we created, where you can see the sleeper in the cab. And if we come to the designer view up here in the left-hand corner, you'll actually see that this is the finished good. Here's the sleeper assembly with all of the components. Here's the cab assembly with all of the components. So the only difference is that Experlogix BOM view lets you view it a little bit differently, but it's just saying if this quote turns into an order, then this is the structure that's going to be automatically created in finance and operations. Okay. So just kind of taking back to regroup first on this aspect that I was talking about. We configured the quote. We turned that quote into an order. And then technically speaking, we could have opened up that order and ran CPQ again. Or if you don't use quoting in finance and operations and you just want to start it from an order, you can do that as well. So you'll see that CPQ menu in either one of those areas. The next thing that I just wanted to briefly talk about was for those of you that maybe have a commerce solution. Let me make that big again. So this is actually brand new. We just released our solution to work with the commerce in F&O. And I'll just take you through, it'll take me about 2 minutes to go through this. We're basically going to add to the menu selection here. So let's say that I was configuring a piece of furniture. So when we click on to be able to configure this particular product, that's going to open it up into Experlogix. So you'll notice that we actually just changed this to say Experlogix, but it's a seamless experience of working within the commerce solution. So now we're able to come in here and say, hey, I want to see this in white. It's going to be a 5-seating arrangement. We want the right or the arm to be on the right-hand side, and we want to see that in light oak. Or no, we want to see it in hush gray. Okay, so you can actually go through, have the pricing being updated automatically based on the different configurations. So what we've done is we've just embedded our CPQ into the commerce so that ultimately we can just say, hey, I want to add this to the bag. And now I want to be able to check out. So I'll view my shopping bag. I'm going to check out as a guest. And from here, of course, I would fill in my details. So I'll just whip through. We'll say save. And so now at this point, this is just the commerce. So save and continue, put in my details, select everything that I need to put in here to process this. Where's my United States? Yeah. Let's see, 1 Test Street. Save and continue. Continue. Place the order. Okay, so boom, I just jammed through that. So now this information, because it started with the commerce, and then this is then going to flow back into finance and operations. Okay, so very, very easy integration there. The other piece that I just kind of touched on, you know, I'm not going to go into talking about portals, but we do have integration to portals. So if you need to extend to a D365 Power Automate portal, we do support that. And then I could certainly show you that if you were to configure, you know, maybe a quote on the portal, have that flow to sales, and then sales would push to F&O. Okay, so we do have that full end-to-end story. The last piece that I want to touch on, I'm just going to show it from the sales, but it's really the quoting portion of actually generating the document. And I wanted to talk to you about a couple different variations that you can do. We call it a smart flow. Now, this would be generated then from F&O, you know, once you finish the quote, but I'm just actually showing it from sales. That you have the ability to have different document automation capabilities. One thing is that I may want to just send the customer a quick email of the information that we talked about. So let's say that I was in F&O, I've gone through the quoting, maybe we compared the different trucks and so forth, and they say, great, you know, I just go ahead and send me a quick email of this information that we discussed. And so I chose a flow that is going to do just that. And so go ahead and close that. So we'll just go ahead and have that complete. I'm going to go over to my other screen and check my emails. Usually takes about a couple seconds to come over. There it is. So we'll just pull this over. So imagine, if you will, that this email was sent to your customer and it's saying, hey, you know, thanks for, you know, the call today. Here's the things that we discussed. Here's your total budgetary pricing. And then from here, you know, let me know how you'd like to proceed. So they may call back and say, yeah, you know what, that looks really great. Could you go ahead and send me an official quote? So if we come back to our smart flows, you have the ability to have a different template that we can choose. So I'm going to now choose this quote flow. Now you'll notice that it's actually going to prompt for some additional information. So it's saying, okay, you know, for this quote, would you like to include a cover letter? Yes or no? If you're including a cover letter, would you like to include some custom text? And maybe as I was talking to them, I learned that it's their birthday tomorrow. So I'm going to say, have a happy birthday. Do we want to include some terms and conditions? Would you like to attach it as a note? Now, this could be, of course, in FinOps. How would you like to send this? So I'm going to go ahead and send it via DocuSign. So we do have integrations to the top e-signature providers, DocuSign being one of them. So I'm just going to go ahead and say next. Now, what you're going to see happens in this panel is it's just kind of letting you know what it's done. It's currently running this flow. It's created the document, but it's waiting for it to come back from DocuSign. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and check my emails. I'll pretend I'm the customer again. The customer now has received this particular document. And we're just going to go ahead and say, review it. And this will just be our DocuSign user experience, but a couple things I'll point out. So it's addressed it to my customer. Dear Bob, here's that happy birthday custom text that I wanted to add. We've got the line items on the quote. We've got the place for them to sign. And because we said to include terms and conditions, it'll do that. Now, by the way, these terms and conditions can change based on different attributes or different options that we picked. Maybe when we add in the sleeper, that'll add in different text to the terms and conditions and so forth. All of that is very doable. But I'm going to go ahead and just say finish, and then we'll go ahead and finish that process. Okay, so we'll just close those. And then I should get the finished document that will have that. Now, not limited to having just simple documents. You can also have very nice looking proposals with big images and information about your company or information about the product that they're getting. So I thought I'll just send you or show you this last one. Hop into that. And then as soon as that finishes generating, we'll go ahead and just open it from this window instead of from my emails. And so you can see that now we've got a really nice looking document with a nice cover page still to our customer. We've got information about this specific truck that they're buying so that they can get really excited about it. We've got the investment summary, pictures of the sleeper that they've decided to include and the different options that they selected for that. Maybe we need to provide some, different details. Hey, because of the engine that you got, this is the horsepower that you're going to get, the torque rating, and so forth. So you can add in documents that have graphs and tables and all of the, cool things that you like to include on your proposals. Okay. All right. So I'm going to kind of recap everything that we talked about here and go back into my finance and operations. So a couple things, CPQ, as I mentioned, we want to make sure that we're configuring everything to the customer's needs. We're going to price it based on different variables. We're going to be able to have visualization if that's necessary. I did have one other example in just a different demo environment that I thought I'd talk through that explains maybe a little bit better of the guided selling, because we noticed that a lot of customers like that feature. So I'm just going to pop into a different example here. This one might have, there we go. This guided selling example for doing a forklift. So again, very, very simple for the end user to use. So I'm a sales rep. I'm on the phone with the customer. They're interested in a forklift. I ask them 3 simple questions. Are you going to be using this for trailer loading? Is it going to be in a warehouse? Is it a manufacturing environment? It could be one of these. It could be 2. It could be all 3. Let's say that they first tell us it's going to be trailer loading. Now it prompts us for the next questions. Tell me more about that. How many pounds does it need to carry? 2,000 pounds. How high does it need to push it? 120 inches. So as we go through, it starts making some recommendations based on how they're going to be using it. And so we can go through, and you'll notice in each one of these selections, we can have things like drop-down selections. We could have yes or no questions. As we answer things, it's going to open up other options for us. Notice when I said no, it says only electric trucks are going to be recommended at this point, and so it changes my selections down below. So as you think about a guided selling approach, really this is always going to be rule checking. You know what, based on how you're telling us that you need to use this, how what should we be proposing? Okay. So I made another selection here. Now it told me it's only going to show us some stand-up models because they're going to get on and off it frequently. So a lot of different things and ways that you can handle a CPQ. Okay, so I'm going to kind of come back to here, just kind of do a little bit of a wrap up and open it up for questions. So if you wanted to learn more, you can certainly go out to this website, experlogix.com resources, where we have access to, different blogs, data sheets, a lot of customer stories, customer videos that you can be looking at, demo videos. So if you wanted to see some other demo videos, we have that out there. You can always request a one-on-one demo. So if you're looking at this and thinking, well, Gwyn, that was great seeing trucks and forklifts, but my company sells something else, or maybe you weren't able to relate it exactly to your business, that's what we're here for. So we actually do have a pretty large demo library of different products and services that we can show you to help relate it to your business. Or if necessary, we can certainly build a custom demo for you. So with that, I am going to, looks like I left plenty of time for questions. So I'm going to open it up for questions.
Yes, we did. The questions come in. You showed configuration on the sales order, but is it possible to configure a project quotation or an item requirement linked to a project?
Great question. Yes, we do support project quotes as well. So you could open up a project quote and configure it directly from there and have it create the WBS structure.
Okay. And say I'm keeping an eye on the chat, but that was our one question so far during the session.
Thank you, Gwyn. Thank you, Kathleen. Are there any other questions? So whilst we wait for the questions, from my experience of over 15 years of experience of implementing dynamics for organizations, what I've noticed is that the product pricing is often an area that often requires enhancement to meet the very bespoke needs of organizations. So my question is how has this helped your customers with their complex pricing structures? Because that's a problem in Dynamics, a standard. So how does Experlogix solve that problem?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, really, our pricing, the way that you can set up prices within Experlogix is highly, highly configurable, meaning you could have, like I said, I just sell this product, no matter who I sell it to, when I sell it, it's $100. But if I have another product that says, well, based on dimensions or based on other attributes, you can have prices be based on a formula. They can be based on a query where it's querying additional information to determine a price. It could be a table where you're actually having it reference a lookup table to come back with some price, and it can be a combination of those things. So often what we'll see for our customers, they'll say, well, you know what, when I have trade agreements that we use in finance and operations, we want to be able to leverage those, but we also want to put on another layer of pricing on top of that. And so what we have the capability of doing is querying data first and then applying the additional logic layers on top of that so that we can price it specific to any pricing rules that you have.
Excellent. Often, yes, because often what we find is that often you get a number of customizations and further enhancements that are required, and it requires non-stop development, which is not exactly what customers want to do. They just want to be able to start configuring. So that's really good to hear. So in terms of like an end-to-end kind of solution, because it seems though that definitely the CPQ part is very, very powerful, where you can really provide really complex attributes for your product and pricing. How does it work from a kind of like an end-to-end experience for the sales as part of the sales funnel, the sales process, the types of steps that take place?
Are you referring to the end-to-end of the end-to-end dynamic story with the using sales, finance, portals? Is that what you mean by end-to-end?
Oh, sorry. I meant more from a kind of a sales process whereby, obviously, you've got the inquiry, then you obviously generate the quote based on the price, and then it actually gets into kind of more for like sales territory and kind of closing it off. So possibly it could go across some of the other product areas, but I was more interested more from an actual sales process. How it kind of dealt with the kind of the end-to-end sales process as well.
Yeah, so the sales process that we typically see is just like you stated, a lead may come in, a salesperson is working that lead may turn into an opportunity. Once we're working that opportunity, we can be configuring an opportunity. So actually Experlogix can work with opportunities, or we're going to go ahead and generate a quote for them that's associated with that opportunity, configure the quote using Experlogix. Being able to have that look at it, all of the relevant information to be able to do that. And then once that quote becomes an order, as I had mentioned, we create the BOM, the routes, everything associated with that for a manufacturing environment so that will flow through to manufacturing. And then once that order, of course, turns into an invoice. So it is a very seamless end-to-end process.
Fantastic. Just checking if there's any other questions. And whilst we wait for any other questions, one of the questions that comes to mind is actually how long it takes to implement. As you can imagine, with development for both Dynamic CE and F&O, when you're trying to customize the pricing engine, there's a lot of custom Microsoft logic that often makes the development a bit more difficult. And takes a bit longer. With this extension, how long would it typically take to implement?
Yeah, so we do offer a couple different implementation approaches, which will affect the timeline. I'll say that our average timeline is between 3 and 6 months for an implementation. Certainly, it can take longer for companies that have a lot of different product lines that they're doing, and the product lines are, configured differently. But the approaches that can be taken, we have a what's called a train the modeler, where if you have people on your team that want to learn Experlogix and really do the majority of the implementation on their own, which is guidance from us, we do have many customers that want to do that. Some customers don't have the resources available. They just want us to build it. So they give us their logic, their rules, or everything that needs to do, and we'll build it for you. And then there's a nice blend between the two, where customers want to be involved. They want to be doing, a portion of the implementation, but because they want to get up to speed faster, they're going to utilize our team. But that rolls me into my final remark about that. One of the things that is unique about Experlogix is the back end, to maintain the configurations is not any, new programming language that you have to learn. It's not a development, platform. Well, it could be, but it's designed to be for business users, really. So it's more of a point and click, really just learning the terminology to be able to apply it to your business. And once people learn that, it's typically easy for them to maintain moving forward. So the development effort is low. Really, we say low to no code is needed for our application.
That's great. So essentially what you're saying there, Gwyn, is that going back to my your previous answer when you mentioned how long it takes to implement. So that would obviously be the whole process, end-to-end process of configuring all the product items and setting up the whole kind of process around that. But to actually just simply enable this feature, typically how long would it take?
Yeah, I mean, enabling the feature, it just gets installed into F&O, and you're immediately seeing the button to CPQ to be able to launch it. But to be able to we can sync to products. There's different ways that we can connect to the finance and operation products. Sometimes people just want to do it a different way, but the actual install is very rapid. It's just a matter of setting up the product structure and setting up the rules and logic that take the bulk of the time.
Great. So there's a question here from Rich who's asking, OEM configuration descriptions at times are not necessarily customer facing. Do you have use cases that can update the descriptions from the factory for customer facing documentation? Great job, thanks.
I'm not sure what's meant by the factory, but I'm going to say, if product descriptions are located somewhere else that you want to expose that for customer facing, then yes, we can do that.
Great. And if Rich wants more information about that, are you able to share your contact details in the chat? If there's any other questions, really fantastic. There is another question, how to expose the price from item attributes or explosion of BOM item?
So we do have a out-of-box integration toolkit, which enables us to pull in information from finance and operations. And if we don't have that specific field, we can write a little bit of custom code to be able to get to that. So bottom line is we can pretty much pull any data from finance and operations. Does that answer your question? Who asked that?
Yes, I believe it does. Thank you. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Any other questions?
I see the last comment that yes, similar thing, pulling information for trade agreements, item codes, account codes, all of that. If we don't have at the out of box, then it's typically just a little bit of a custom code.
Okay. Whilst we wait for some of these other questions, I do actually have a question. From an industry perspective, what are the main industries that you find have the most complex requirements for CPQ? For example, have you ever done anything in the real estate, for example, industry?
I don't believe we've done anything in real estate. We have done things with home builders, but I'm trying to think of what type of quote a real estate company would need to put together. I haven't had that come across for CPQ needs. So,
yeah, I was thinking the real estate or any other particular industries that you feel that could benefit from CPQ?
Kind of going back to earlier, let me see if I can pull that up here. Go back just right here. Typically, I always say for CPQ, it's really any company that has complexities. So when I look at even professional services, often people don't think of professional services for a CPQ, but services can be highly configurable, whether it be, a catering company or it's a cleaning company that's going to be cleaning office buildings and they need to look at square footage and, if we're vacuuming versus mopping versus cleaning bathrooms versus, all of these different things that have to be taken into consideration. A landscaping company coming in to do landscaping, lawn work, that type of thing. So services is a really good fit for us. Hardware and software, I think, has a lot of complexities because with companies now selling SaaS products and being able to calculate the price of the software that they're selling based on a lot of different attributes. And then, manufacturing just in general is probably one of the most complex because if we're going to be making a product that was configured specific to a customer's needs, we got to get it right. We have to have those rules being done right, and they have to then create the BOM and all of the route steps associated to produce it. Telecoms have a lot of complexities that are very unique to that industry. So hopefully this slide helps as a reminder, but we're a good fit in a lot of areas.
Definitely agree on the professional services. I've seen a few scenarios, many scenarios where you have professional services that need to tailor, for example, training services, and it could even be legal services, right? It can be
Yep.
anything that requires a very bespoke pricing based on their service. So, right, okay, this is very, very interesting. And okay, I think that leaves us with 5 minutes towards the end of the session. So I'd like to give yourself, Gwyn, and Catalin, an opportunity to kind of conclude on this session, and as an opportunity to kind of provide your contact details and share it with the community.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I did put my email address in the chat, and certainly, I mean, you're welcome to call me as well. So I'll just put that in here as well. And feel free to reach out to me via email or phone call. And as I mentioned, we're certainly happy to get on a one-on-one call with you. Often what I'll do with customers is get on a call, learn a little bit more about your business, talk about some different ways that we could help, some pain that we can relieve for you, and then put together a one-on-one demonstration where we may even have a demo that's specific to your industry that we can speak to. So happy to help however we can.
Excellent, Gwyn. Well, we really appreciate you joining us all the way from Colorado today. So thank you so much. And yes, we look forward to seeing you at a future community event.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the time today. Have a
Thank
great
you very
rest of your
much.
conference. Okay.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye. Wow. Okay. So that was Gwyn and Catalin showcasing configurable price quote for Dynamics 365 F&O. And we have a few minutes left to the next session, which is none other than Microsoft MVP